Hello and welcome to the AI Sana Industry Knowledge Model. I'm Elena Sidek with you today. And today we will be talking about AI in the energy sector, one of the most complicated one. And our guest today is James Boyd, a global CIO advisor and senior technology executive with more than 25 years of experience in digital transformation, AI-driven innovations, cybersecurity, modernization, and critical infrastructure. He currently serves as a Chief Information Officer and Vice President, Digital Technology and Solutions at Valeura Energy in the Asia Pacific region, where he leads technology strategy, digital transformation, cybersecurity governance, and AI-driven operational change across the business. Valeura Energy is a Canadian upstream oil and gas company with producing assets in Thailand and an operated gas appraisal position in Turkey. James brings a rare combination of strategic, operational, and governance experience. Alongside his executive role, he has also advised boards, executives, and governments across energy, industrial, defense, and critical infrastructure environments on digital strategy, AI governance, OT and IT convergence, and operational resilience. Today, James is joining us not as a representative of any one company, but as a highly experienced industry expert sharing his personal professional perspective. James, thank you very much for joining us. To begin, I would like to start with a broader overview of where AI is creating value across the energy sector today, and then we will go deeper into specific cases. Please.
Thank you for the introduction. Put together just a couple of slides just to help streamline the conversation and kind of discuss some of the ways that AI is currently being used in the energy sector. For the overview slide, I've divided it into general energy, oil and gas, and shared capabilities. The first sector, if you want to just change the slide, which is just general energy. And this is used throughout most energy, depending on the industry itself, is demand forecasting, grid stability and outage prediction, renewable energy optimization, customer churn and dynamic pricing, and of course, regulatory compliance monitoring. The sector specific to oil and gas would be things such as seismic data interpretation, predictive maintenance, production optimization, safety and abnormal detection, and of course, supply chain and logistics. And shared across both of these sectors, and any AI sector, basically, will be AI governance frameworks, data platform and quality, IT service automation, and cybersecurity and threat detection. That's good.
Do we need to go deeper?
Do you want to go deeper?
No. Or you finished with the presentation? I didn't understand that it's like. Okay. Can we just talk about for example, like we will finish them and here general energy.
Yeah.
So can you tell a little bit, like just like maybe a few sentences about this demand forecasting, what's that and for what? What value? Grid stability, like what's that and for what value?
Sure.
It's just like a little bit more.
Sure. No problem. Let me take a read. All right. On the general energy, basically on the commercial side, there's a couple things on the commercial side, but let's start with demand forecasting. Basically, all this is using machine learning fundamentally to study energy consumption based upon, the weather, the market, historical patterns, and it's solely based on optimizing your buying and your selling decisions. The other commercial aspect that you tend to do, which is kind of correlated, is, customer churn and dynamic pricing. It kind of looks at, at-risk customers and looks at trades-off and usage patterns for your customers. Within that itself, outside of that, you then have the operation side, which is the counter aspect of it, which is grid stability and outage protection, which is basically using AI or any type of monitoring, frankly, for real-time prediction of issues within your platform, whatever your power delivery system is. Usually fully automated, AI is changing that, but we'll talk about that later on a bit. And then you, of course, have the kind of the newer piece, which is the renewable energy optimization. Renewable is a little bit different because it's more volatile. It's very different than standard grid stability and outage predictions. So you have a lot more volatility in the renewable energy optimization. So the models are quite a little bit different in regards to how you have to adjust forecasting because weather and grid conditions and usage actually affects quite a lot more. Within all of that spectrum of thing, you of course have your governance, which is the regulatory compliance monitoring, which is most businesses have this, whether or not in regards to what industry you're in. So you have, contracts, reportings, filings. If you're publicly traded, you've got much more. You have compliance gaps, and you have automated regulatory reporting. So all of those types of things include kind of AI use cases currently, specifically to general energy.
Let's move to another sector, oil and gas.
All right, specific to oil and gas, a little bit different. Specifically industry specific, seismic data interpretation. Geology and resource management has just a ton of information, specifically drilling as well. So using AI to understand and analyze that data is kind of a large thing. Although, frankly, machine learning has been applied to seismic data interpretation for probably the last 15 years. So it's not drastically being impacted by AI, fundamentally. It's just marginally going to be. You have predictive maintenance, and that has to do with your pipelines, your pumps, your rigs, your drilling, your production. That's all the SCADA and the IoT stuff, fundamentally. So that's how that all plugs into it. And then you have the production optimization, which basically is tuning, right? You're looking at issues during the drilling programs or whatnot that you're using data sensors to kind of optimize your production. In that piece, of course, very, very important to oil and gas is safety and anomaly detection. AI is not probably used as much as it should in what's called HSSE, but for gas leaks and safe conditions, but it's starting to be implemented as well. And of course, then you have supply chain, which is very similar to any type of other supply chain and logistics. It's about contracts and selling and storage and all those types of things, and procurement within production and all those other things that we're using AI for in oil and gas.
Let's move to general cases across both sectors.
Sure. So across any AI, fundamentally, nowadays, anything to do with data infrastructures, you have governance frameworks, which is about, approving, auditing, retiring AI models, how you manage it, the security around those models is very, very important nowadays. All this is kind of being discovered in how to implement it in enterprise environments. So this is an evolving space on how AI governance and frameworks are going to work, and also ties a little bit into data sovereignty as well to that degree. Data platforms and quality. This is a big thing that's probably been around forever, ever since we've been using data for anything. It's about getting data to a state where it's in a known, trusted point, and it's standardized. Kind of key to allow AI to scale and to allow us to use corporate data. IT service automation. This is a smaller one, to be honest with you. It's just service automation for IT support or for services within a company. Can be applied to administrative roles, can be done by any roles in the company that AI or an AI agent can actually do. Then wrapped up in all of that, you have cybersecurity and threat detection. This actually has two pieces of it, specifically to energy. Energy, of course, you have your SCADA equipment, your IoT equipment, your production. Cybersecurity is a big thing. We use AI right now to help detect those threats and correlate the data in order to stop production loss, fundamentally. You also have the issue in regards to, across any industry right now, is that AI platforms are going to be used by criminals, criminals basically, in order to use AI to get corporate information, drilling information, variety of things, and all those things are going to add a whole nother layer of threat to any sector that in any industry.
Yeah, cybersecurity is growing now. demand for cybersecurity. We had like one speaker here also like on our program in cybersecurity. He said that demand for
Hmm.
specialists in that it's like much more than we have specialists, and it's like every day new, like things from cybersecurity
Yep.
appear. So
It's
let's
also, yeah.
mhm,
I was going to,
finish.
AI will also make the threat much larger as well. People that use AI to attack, and then the damage that's done by AI will actually be quite more significant than it has been in the past, right? So we need to do
Mm.
AI against AI in order to minimize attack surfaces and honestly to contain the damage.
Okay, and thank you very much for this introduction. And now let's move on with questions. First question, what I have to you: which of these use cases do you think are already delivering real value, and which ones are still more experimental?
Right now, you're looking at, I think you're looking at anything that attracts directly to operations or cyber. Right now, you're seeing real traction in, right? Predictive maintenance,
Mm-hmm.
production optimization, stuff like that. Already a
Mm-hmm.
great value point in. Things like demand forecasting are maturing right now, but they're very much they're still in their early stages, right? We don't quite see value back to them past pilot stages. So
Mm-hmm.
we're having some success in the pilots, but converting them over into realized value corporately is still in process. Whereas, like I said, things like production optimization and predictive maintenance and cyber, it's moving forward quite well.
Okay, and next question. From your perspective, what separates companies that are just testing AI from those that are actually turning it into operational advantage? I know that you have a lot of experience and you started to use ML like many years ago,
Yeah.
like before that hype, what we have right now.
Mhm.
And also, I know that especially in energy sector, companies divided in two, type of companies, like maybe groups within companies, like because it's traditional business, and people who are older in management, they were like, oh no, we don't need that. They like really resist. But
Mhm.
like young generation, they kind of like less maybe understand like problems, or but they really ready to move. And in some companies I know that it's like going well, implementation of AI, but some still like on the like kind of behind. And with your as a professional who are working in that field like for many years,
Mhm.
like in your perspective, what separates companies that are just testing AI and who are actually turning into operational advantage?
There's a couple things. There's a couple things that are important. One, company has to treat data as a strategic asset. They have to
Mm,
understand that it's very much a strategic asset, and they have to make sure that whatever initiative they're having is tied to specific business decisions, right? It can't be for technology's sake. Most oil and gas companies aren't technology companies, right? They're businesses that run pretty efficiently, pretty well. So you have to very much tie them to a true business outcome, a value statement that has nothing to do with the technology itself, but brings value back into the company in a different way. The other thing that also touches base completely on what you're saying is you have to build trust with the operators, right? You have to align their workflows. It doesn't matter if you have good technology if you have a poor adoption rate with your staff, it's absolutely meaningless, right? If technology changes but the organization doesn't change, nothing happens. And nothing happens at all. It's just a waste of time. This always leads to a leadership problem, to be honest with you. You have to do operational change management company wide to show the value of the technology and have it adopted in a way that builds trust, specifically in AI, right? AI is if you're an operator who's done things one way for a very long time, very, very successfully, right? You're bringing models that they're supposed to trust and react to, right? It takes time to build that, and there has to be leadership in regards to how you present that and how you allow them to react to those things. And it's all about organizational change. Technology will come and go. I don't know what's going to be next after AI. It'll be something new. but it always comes down to, how we can effectively and efficiently change the organizational processes to take advantage of that.
Okay, that gives us, I think, decent overview of the landscape, and let's now move from the broad picture to the first specific case. And
Okay.
first specific case, what we want to talk about is demand forecasting. But
Okay.
before we talk about it, just in simple words, why this case is like actually important, what it gives to the company, why company, oil company or like gas company need to do that?
It's efficiencies, right? I mean, for demand forecasting, why you'd want to use AI for.
No. It's not about using AI yet. It's just about like demand forecasting just by itself. Why it's important to forecast demand? What it influence?
Forecasting. Okay. Best way for me to say that.
Because you
How
know
would I say
you're a
that?
specialist, and for you it's obvious. Now we are talking with students who didn't work in oil company, and they are like, okay, like why you need to, like forecast the demand at all? It's just like in simple words, like for.
It's about the simple words. It's like any. So forecasting is very important because it costs the company money when they over procure something, when they carry
Mm-hmm,
unnecessary costs, when they under
mm-hmm,
procure something, or they face penalties for it, right? So
mm-hmm,
specifically with any commodity, specifically energy, for example,
mm-hmm,
timing is
mm-hmm,
key, right? Timing is key on when you buy it and where you buy it from and how you manage it, right? Forecasting
mm-hmm.
is all about understanding the timing, the market conditions, the market fluctuations, and the previous demand, and anticipating when's the right time to buy or sell or change the prices.
Okay, so now it's understandable.
Yeah.
And now to begin, where does demand forecasting really sit in the energy value chain?
Um, well, the interesting thing about that is it sits in two, right? So it starts on the commercial function, which basically means, about when you procure it, why you procure it, the timing of all that.
Mm,
But then it has a downstream effect, right? So depending on when you do all that affects your dispatch, your procurement, and your maintenance schedules, right? So
mm.
it's both. It's both in the commercial and the operational side of things.
Okay, and if we think about this part of the business,
Hmm.
is it more, buyer driven, producer driven, or really shaped by market design and regulation at the same time?
So again, this is what makes AI uh, kind of an interesting option for this.
Mm,
Is it's all three, right?
mm,
Producers
mm-hmm,
plan the output, buyers plan the procurement, but both are kind of constrained to the market conditions, right?
mm,
So it's buyer driven, it's production driven, and it's also shaped by the market design. If it's a
mm,
regulatory environment as well, you then have on top of that you have compliance requirements that shapes your forecasting agenda. So
mm-hmm.
it's complex. It has a lot of complex pieces to it.
Okay, and would you say this used to be a relatively stable forecasting problem, but is now becoming much more dynamic because of weather volatility, renewables, changing demand patterns, and market complexity?
Yes, significantly, actually. It used to be that you could build a reasonable forecast on like historical data, temperature correlation, seasonal patterns. You'd have reasonable rates, you'd have reasonable error rates, but it was fine. Now, the way renewable penetration has made supply less predictable, demand side flexibility, EVs, distributed storage, responsive industry load. It's making consumption harder to read to understand the market drivers, right? So a
Mhm,
lot of times the traditional approaches are kind of hitting their hard limits on how to kind of
mhm.
manage and understand.
And what are the main uncertainties that make this case so difficult today?
Uh, you know, Historically, it's always been weather, oddly enough, being the dominant. It's usage that's always done it. But I mean, it's now compounded because the demand mix it's shifted quite a bit. There's also market price signals, behavioral uncertainties. You have politics, which are influencing the world. I'm sure we're all being explored to it. And then there's unplanned operational events, outages, transmission constraints, supply, industry load changes. It moves fast. There's a lot of uncertainty by general nature.
And so that helps us place the case in the context.
Hmm.
And let's go one level deeper into the actual business problem.
Hmm.
So the case for energy company with design forecasting, and when an energy company turns to AI for demand forecasting, what are the real business problem it is trying to solve?
So it's trying to allow you to make decisions under uncertainty at speed, right? So it helps fuels, gives you the forecast itself, which it can generate faster. It can do the analytics, feed into procurement decisions, trading positions, dispatch plans, right? AI has the ability to ingest far more data into its models and kind of narrow the cone of uncertainty a bit, right? So, and it also can give real time, pull in real time information, right? All these are kind of meaningfully different and kind of speed the ability that you can make well educated or aware decisions, which you just can't get on traditional models.
And before AI comes in, how is this usually was done? What data was used? What kind of work is being done? And how are decisions actually made?
So it was done on statistical models, regression models, time series, a variety of things, and honestly, the analyst's personal judgment, right? Experience, fundamentally, right? The issue with that is experience can't carry forward, right? It doesn't scale. It's not transferable when somebody leaves, right? So that ends up kind of being a bottleneck, right? It's just general experience and given the experiences. The other issue that we had that you tend to have is there's a handoff period between forecasting and the decision. So somebody makes a report, they do an analysis, they interpret things. There's a latency and a distortion to the decision maker, right? And that tends to cause a lot of issues and bottlenecks in the decision making process.
And how did you transform that? It's like, so before it was regression, start time series, and now how you did you transform that process?
We've transformed the process before running models and giving a fair amount of buy-in. The issue has never been the technology, to be honest with you. The machine learning and the analytics have been around for a very long time. It has always been the process of process and organizational change, which is kind of the harder process, right? So you have some of the issues you have is a lot of times you have silos within the organization, different teams, different systems, different cadences, and they don't connect. The actual decision flow doesn't really work. And those are all the types of things within the organization that you have to make better. One of the issues with AI, if your process, your internal process is inefficient, or has too many checks and balances, is slow, the last thing you want to do is just automate that slow process. So, I mean, you very much have to concentrate on those efficiencies, get rid of the silos, get people talking, get people to understand and trust the models. And that will kind of speed up the adoption of those types of technology changes. Never had a problem with the technology. It always works fairly well. It always comes down to process and organization that actually stops the value set.
But this is great points actually. Like you kind of like predicted one of my questions,
Mhm.
but still like I just want to come to technology that you were using one method, but now do you use another method eventually, or you cannot implement new one because of this resistance or culture?
We have pilots. So we have some pilots that we're doing analytical analysis. But at the end, the stopgap is we still have to prove to the operators, the people making decisions, that the data is valuable, right? Because it's still human in the middle for decision making processes. So we're in that process. Even if I can come up with a more dynamic model and I can give them better information decision, they still have to trust that information and they still have to make those decisions. So that's the key part. That's changing from making a pilot that can be successful to actually operationalize.
So now you are like in the transforming phase, I would say. So you have a pilot
Proof,
after that.
yep, yep. Proof of concept, basically. I can prove the concept, that's not a problem, but I can't. Shifting an organization is always the tough part.
Okay, and in your experience, is the real issue besides this culture usually just that the forecast isn't good enough, or is the deeper issue that organization doesn't connect for forecasting well enough to commercial action?
Again, it's the same issue. It's connection to the problem, right? No matter how great the technical model is or the forecasting model is, teams still make their decisions based upon gut. You know what I mean? So they don't trust or understand what the model output is. So it's very, very hard to get them to have buy-in to trust that aspect of things. So that's just a process. The issue too is we don't want them to blindly trust the information either. You know what I mean? I don't want somebody there to blindly trust the information and understand. It has to be a balance between experience and, understanding the dynamics and using the forecasting model as well. So, we're still kind of playing with understanding what that balance is.
Okay, and now that brings us to data, because forecasting is only as good as the information and systems behind it.
Yes.
So, and let's talk about data and information flows. To make this kind of use case work well, what data really needs to come together?
Okay, you got historical load, consumption data, weather data, market price data, consumer information, segment level usage, your asset information, your supply chain, scheduled maintenance plans, industrial shutdowns, all those types of things. The key, though, to this is it's better to have well integrated basic data versus too much data. A huge data set with quality problems, meaningless, right? Too much data can actually cause noise. And if there's inaccuracy to the models, that causes doubt. And it's very hard when you're trying to sell something to have inaccuracies with it. So it's best to start with a smaller subset of data, which is clean, which structured, which is complete, and then layer it on later. Because once you lose trust from the operators, it's hard to get it back.
Okay, but you're still integrating, kind of link one data to another, for example, like combine weather with customer usage patterns, for example. And when you combine it, what kind of integration problems usually show up first?
You're looking at data format issues, data consistency issues, data gaps, all the standard things, right? And you have to make sure it's consistent how you're bringing that data over and that it's clean and in a standardized format, right? So that when you're running the modeling over time, the data is in a trusted state. It's a trusted source, right? So you would rarely ever bring the information over straight from the data source. You tend to put it into a data lake, right? Clean the data up, standardize the data, and then run your models from that data lake.
And what about the quality of data when you were implemented across different companies? How often you saw that it's like bad data, bad quality data, or like good quality data? Usually, how much time you spent on preparing the data?
So generally speaking, if you have good data, which means you've already made a commitment to bring in good data because it's usually not in a consistent format, you've probably spent a couple years at this point. If we go one step back from AI, let's talk about like dashboards and stuff like that, Power BI, right? A lot of companies that implement that have already started a data lake program, which basically means they're already pulling data in, they're already cleaning it up, they're already standardizing it. If you're at that point, then an AI model on top of it is really quite easy, right? It's a couple, 6 months to a year to get into a good spot and start returning to your business. If you don't, you're talking adding another year to the process to try to clean up the data sets, at least. And there's going to be times when you just don't have maintenance data specifically. Like in forecasting, it's fine. But if you're looking at predictive maintenance, for example, which is something else, then you're looking at just absolutely huge gaps in information because older SCADA equipment just doesn't have the data that you need. Forecasting, a little bit better.
Okay, and that leads us to an important distinction. Better digital tools are one thing, but real AI capability is another. So let's talk about AI versus traditional tools. Many energy companies already have some forecasting tools. So what does AI add that is usually new?
Not as much as you'd think, to be honest with you. The core technologies, regression, classifications, all those methods, been around for a very, very long time. What's changed is that you can run the models at scale. They can update them continuously, and you can actually deploy them in operational workflow, right? So the new to this equation is not the algorithm necessarily, not the math that we're running against the formulas. It's the fact that it's scalable enough that we can actually operationalize it.
So, and you still, like using that regression, classification,
You are
like
just doing it faster.
just doing it fast.
I mean, the one thing
Okay.
that it's a little bit better at too is nonlinear variable interactions. Taking a tremendous amount of data and like understanding that pattern, it's better than most forecasting models. But still, the fundamental math is the same.
So this is important. Notice that now people, because many people don't understand why they need to know regression or like random forest techniques. They were like, okay, I just will tell AI, it will do like anything for me. It will, I mean, like you need to understand, like what you're giving. And if you want to, solve the complex issue,
Yes.
you need to understand what formula or algorithm, you need to give to that model.
100%. You need to be able to break down any problems into its pieces, and those are the formulas. And you need to be able to troubleshoot what you're getting from AI. If you don't understand those parts, you're not very useful, frankly, right? You need to be able to look at two models and see what's going on. You can't trust AI implicitly. There's going to be flaws, and you need to understand the mechanics of the engine that is AI and what it's doing at all those points.
Yeah, thank you. It's like very important now notice what you said, because it's like AI should be explainable. And
Yes.
what you just said before, like management cannot, adopt some solution because they don't know how it's like black box, like kind of like magic. Like throw something there and it will give you like, but how it was doing it is like algorithm, and
Yeah.
it could be explained. And no management from big companies, they will never buy something that you said, okay, it's magic, just trust it. It's like it's not the
No.
case.
Yeah, absolutely not. And I mean, like most companies, like are already successful, right? They're already successful. You have to make a business case on why to adopt AI to make yourself more efficient, and you have to be able to explain it in detail. Because believe it or not, these are educated people that have a commitment to the investors or to the rest of the board to run a profitable, safe, secure, and producing company. Right? They are not going to make those decisions if you can't explain in detail why it's going to work.
Okay, so, and maybe you answered already partly to this question what I will ask, but still maybe you just like add some thoughts.
Sure.
Why traditional statistical and rule-based approaches often no longer enough?
It's because, first off, sometimes it is. Sometimes you don't actually, sometimes the simplest approach that actually solves the problem you should stay with. Right? Always remember that. But nowadays, the operating environments have gotten much more complex, specifically in energy, renewables, distributed resources, volatile demands. Linear statistical approach is just, it's too slow. And in those cases, you have to look at leveraging more analytics and more power to get a more complete picture of it. It's just a complexity.
Okay, and how do you know when a company has moved from better reporting to a real AI-enabled forecasting capability?
This is the same answer for any technology improvement that you ever do. It's when the output of that technology is embedded in the decision workflow of actual decisions being made. That is the moment you'll know that's successfully implemented is when you trust the environments it's implemented and you're actually making decisions based upon it. It doesn't matter whether it's AI or any type of technology. That's a successful implementation.
Exact to the point. Let's now talk about what happens when this usually works in practice, and we are moving to business and strategic impact.
Okay.
When this use case works well, where does the value show up first?
Cost reductions, procurement efficiencies, better pricing, and stronger trading position, basically, specifically to this.
And how long does it usually take before the business begins to see measurable results?
If your data infrastructure is good and clean, you're looking at 6 to 12 months, basically. If your data needs a lot of work and cleanup, you're looking at 18 months to 2 years.
But if I don't know if you can just like I need to maybe range of this economic impact if you like implement it right. Maybe you said cost reduction, for example, like this is so it could be like 2 times or like 3 times or like
No,
increase in
you're
what's the
looking at
efficiency?
cost reduction and procurement efficiency. You're looking at 30%. Easy.
30%.
30%, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Better pricing and stronger trading position, you're probably looking at 10 to 20%, depending on volumes and the market and the volatility that you can leverage, right? So
But
you're looking at 25 to 30% efficiencies.
okay, but maybe like for energy companies, they're not smaller. It's like big expenses. I mean, like when we talk about 20 to 30%, it could be big amount actually.
Millions, absolutely millions. Also, the thing to always realize that when you make something faster, you're
Mm-hmm.
allowing people to do other things, right? Those other things produce more money, right? So if you're looking at oil and gas, if everything makes everyone busier and they have more time to drill some more holes for drilling or to have more production hours, you're adding those production hours to the value of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So there's indirect value to efficiencies in any company. But I mean, direct to cost reduction and procurement efficiencies, timing, closing contracts quicker, stuff like that, you're gunning towards 30%, which is millions.
So
Keep in
now we
mind, yeah,
understand the level.
in a 200 person, rough numbers, don't quote me on this. If you're looking at a 200 person oil and gas company, if you save 30 minutes on everyone's schedule that's a little bit faster using AI for anything, you're saving $2.5 million, right? Just on cost for employees. It's huge. The numbers are huge.
Yeah, it's like depends on scale of the company. And in
Yeah,
energy and oil and gas, it's usually big companies.
yeah.
It's like everything could have impact. So, and have you seen cases where the model improved and actually was good, but the business still didn't get the value because decision making didn't change?
Yes, it's even if it's technically a solid model, if you have poor adoption by the commercial teams, they don't trust it, they don't understand it, they don't use it, you get zero value. And that is always not a technology failure, that's a leadership failure. Always is. See it all the time.
And last question about this case, strategically, if a company becomes much better at forecasting demand,
Hmm.
okay, we understand about efficiency, it's saving money and so on, but can it create a real competitive edge?
Yes, in competitive markets, it absolutely positions you to lower your costs, which is a competitive advantage for any cash flow, is a competitive advantage for any company. If you're in a regulated industry, the value is in efficiencies and risk reduction, right? Which is big as well for regulated. So yes,
Okay,
both.
great. That was our first case from the commercial side, and let's now move to the operational side, where AI has been used not just to improve performance, but to strengthen resilience and continuity. And this is case grid stability and outage prediction. So, and here using AI to monitor grid health, identify early signals of instability and support action before outages occur. This case is especially important because it connects operational performance with resilience, critical infrastructure, and public trust. And let's set the context. To begin, where would you place this use case in the energy value chain?
In the energy value chains, well, it's in resilience and infrastructure, right? So the grid itself touches service reliability, regulatory performance, safety, public trust, and reputation. So it specifically sits at the intersection between OT, asset management, and enterprise risk.
And in your opinion, is this mainly an operations case, or maybe it's broader than that, really a resilience and infrastructure case?
It's much broader. It's a resilience and infrastructure case. It's much broader. So it sits in, like I said, it sits in IT operations, asset management, and enterprise risk, which is much larger than even forecasting.
Has this area become more difficult in recent years because of distributed generation, renewables, electrification, cyber risk, and maybe more volatile load patterns?
Yes. So a traditional grid was very predictable, centralized generation, very passive loads. And now it's distributed generation, EVs, batteries, smart industrial loads, and some networks are bidirectional, and they're all much more volatile. So you also have, of course, the cyber risks as well. And then we have nowadays physical stress, right? From aging infrastructure and even extreme weather, right? So the operating environment has become much more complex.
And what are the biggest source of uncertainty in grid stability today?
Oddly, right now, for larger grid stabilities, it's renewals. They're just very different on how they do demand. Beyond that, you're looking at unexpected equipment failures, stuff like that, cyber issues, but mostly it's demand volatility from EV charging patterns and industrial load shifts. It's very much the traditional energy is much more difficult to manage compared to 15 years ago.
Now that we have placed the case in the context, let's look at the actual operation problem.
Mm-hmm.
The business and operational problem part. What is the real problem AI is solving in this case?
So the fundamental shift is moving from fault response to fault anticipation. Traditional monitoring tells you something was wrong. AI basically tells you something is likely to go wrong with hopefully enough lead time to fix it, right? So you're moving from preventing an outage rather than minimizing it. So it's actually trying to resolve it faster or without disruption. Fundamentally, it's just a very different way of running operation. It's preventative.
And how, like on which data it's possible to do that prediction of like that something will go wrong probably?
Well, it's fundamentally so the models capture things like SCADA equipment, performance information, maintenance information, all those types of things right now. So those are the things that are brought into it. The data sets are, depending on the equipment, that is one of the issues. Performance and maintenance schedules specifically are kind of collected in an antiquated kind of way, right down to, paper. People write down the maintenance on specific devices on paper. So you don't have real-time information on performance issues or maintenance cycles for the equipment. From a SCADA point of view, IoT kind of view, that information is better on newer machines, or newer systems, but the older systems don't necessarily have as much data as we need to actually figure out when something's going to go wrong in advance.
Okay, and before AI, how do operators usually detect and respond to instability of this risk?
Alarms and thresholds. Basically, a device is in a known state. They put a threshold on when, it's set an alarm when it beats a threshold. Right? That's not a lot. The issue is basically once the alarm fires, your system's already in a degraded state. So, which is the biggest issue, right? And also responses all depend on the operator's judgment and experience. There's nothing automated about the response to these.
So, and I mean, I think it's like everybody can imagine when, like you're sitting and like suddenly it's like light goes down and you like calling when you will, it's like some, like crash happens, they explaining, and nobody can tell you when it will be turned on again.
Or even worse is, wasn't there anything that told you in advance that it was going to happen? Like if it's electricity, were there any bleeps or brownouts or something that told you maybe the system was under stress, right? Those are the types of things that we're trying to get away from.
So an AI can do prediction. So predict all those things so they don't, before they get broken.
Yeah, they can also bring in multiple sets of information and kind of do much more complex multivariable patterns they can look at. Like they can see stresses down the line and actually guess, fundamentally, statistically guess that those machines are under stress and you should probably look at it to prevent a downtime. At which point you would schedule a downtime, which is better than an unplanned downtime, fix the equipment and bring it up in a shorter amount of time than it would if it actually had a complete failure.
And for this solution, what data need to be brought together? I mean, like you said, like list the data, but like how they kind of like depend maybe on each other. How it's like if you brought few data, like how it's like enhance the model.
How you would bring it in? Again, it's more just the same way you'd bring in any type of system, right? So SCADA equipment are all designed to theoretically capture log information and performance information. And the more sensors you have, ideally, the more data that you will have. And all that information is just kind of used for modeling in regards to like figuring out, load. Even when even when something as simple as, you have a motor or a pump that's running and the operators ran it past the threshold of how much it should be turning or pumping for a period of time, right? The analytics will capture that information and know that that will impact in the long term the reliability of that part. So any of those types of information is what it would be collecting.
So you need a lot of maybe like sensor data, this
Yeah,
is SCADA signals, equipment health data,
yeah,
maintenance history, for example.
yeah. And consistency of the data. A lot of these SCADA equipment are not, they could be residing on a remote platform, or they could be, in an industrial area with limited connectivity. You need to be able to get all that information into the system for it to analyze.
So how important are sensor data, maybe SCADA signals, equipment health data, maintenance history, outage history, and maybe cyber anomalies?
Huge. I mean, the inputs are basically, like you said, SCADA data, SCADA signals, real-time grid status, equipment health data, conditional monitoring, historical outages, maintenance records, weather data, depending on where you're at. All these things need to be loaded into the models. You got now cyber issues on top of that you have to be aware of. All those types of things are required to be brought into for the data for ingestion to get a proper model.
And which of these are usually hardest to integrate in practice?
Equipment health and maintenance records. They're often legacy, partially paper based or in a format that doesn't connect to modern data platforms. Cyber is also very difficult as well because there's a cultural space between IT security and OT operations. So a lot of times they don't naturally share information. So building trust between IT and OT operations is very important to get cyber information to flow between the organizations.
But let me guess, when you implement this, maybe even if you have, like, for example, not all data, but some of these types of data, it's already given some, like better, like experience than with traditional AI.
Yep. Yep. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, what was the question?
The question was that if we don't have like all types of data, is it enough to implement like 3, for example, or 4 types of data and it will give you result already?
Yes, any data is good data to a certain degree. Well, that's a lie. Actually, I take that back completely. If you have a reliable, trusted information with proper consistency that you trust, yes, more information is always good to be able to bring awareness to what condition your equipment's in and what needs to be done on a planning point of view. The AI analytics, though, and how much AI will be able to help us comes down to our depth of data we're getting access to from our SCADA system. So many companies don't necessarily have as many data points that they collect on their equipment. And if they had more, the AI models would be much more efficient and effective in getting data. The other thing that complicates this as well is you need to maintain sovereignty access to your data sets. A lot of times, like on a platform, it's operated, for example, by another company that you don't necessarily get access to the SCADA information or the full set of SCADA information. So you always have to make sure that you negotiate or you keep that you have a full set of the data and not a cleansed version of the data in order to do that work as well. Like all IT stuff, data sovereignty is extremely, extremely important for the success of your AI models.
And once the system is in place, does it often expand from outage prediction into broader resilience management? Maybe asset health,
Yes,
maintenance planning, or emergency response?
it does that, absolutely. Any risk-based maintenance or emergency response optimizations, it does. It also allows you to do more dynamic planning, right? You can actually do tabletop exercises and scenarios with realistic data. So it greatly reduces emergency response times and downtime in an emergency. It's always, it unlocks just tremendous things once you have a solid foundation.
And what are the biggest barriers here? OT, IT, separation, data latency, infrastructure quality, maybe regulation or safety concerns or trust from operators?
You basically said it. It's always the big gap between OT and IT separation. It's never technical, honestly. It's always cultural and governance wise. And then, of course, you have, data latency on older systems, which is an issue. And again, access to full data sets. Those are the biggest things. The hard fact about it is you also have to make sure that the operator trusts the equipment and the information that they're getting, right? If they don't believe in the system and what it's doing and what to respond to, the technology is completely irrelevant. So.
And let's move to last section, operational and strategic impact. When this use case works well, what metrics really matter?
Okay, you're looking at outage frequency, durations, those types of things. You got the classic mean time to detection, mean time to restore. The key one, though, is the predictive interventions to reaction responses. And that is basically how many times did you avoid something, which again is hard to quantify. And everyone's kind of working on quantifying that. But that's really the only way that you'll be able to see if AI is shifting your operational model or just improving post-issue response speeds, which you don't. You want to shift to preventative maintenance and prevent outages versus just clean up the outages faster.
And how should companies think about the economics of this, given that much of the value comes from outages prevented rather than revenue directly generated?
So that is the terrible part about in companies investing in this kind of tech. It's extremely hard to explain to finance and leadership, avoided cost arguments, frankly. It just is. You have penalties, emergency response, customer compensations, reputation damage, but it's just an ongoing process of trust and building your trust up with your leadership group and your operators in order to sell it. Honestly, it'll always be a bit of a fight. It's like any insurance policy. I pay into the insurance policy all the time just in case I have a problem. The interesting thing about it is there is going to be a new driver, and that's on the cyber side of things. Many governments are requiring reporting cyber events. So if you have to report cyber events, you have to report impact, which means you have to understand better your SCADA and your IoT environment. So it'll be an interesting driver to increase the data and the analysis that we're doing on SCADA equipment and IoT.
And last questions, strategically, does this kind of capability create real advantage, or does it eventually become a baseline expectation across the sector?
It will be a baseline expectation, and honestly, eventually a license to operate. You're not going to be allowed to operate safely. You're not be considered safe operator unless you have this level of management in place. For right now, it's an advantage right now. It's a resilience thing. You're running things safely, and as complexity increases. But the reality of it is, things like this will just become required to operate any asset.
Okay. So we are now looked at one case from the commercial side and one from the operational side. And to close, I would like to compare them directly, like just a few more questions. So if you compare demand forecasting and grid stability, which one is usually easier to start with?
Always demand forecasting. It's just got less inputs, frankly, and its outputs are easier to deliver on. And you don't need to solve the whole OT, IT integration problems at all. And that, and fundamentally, is a bad forecast might cost you money, but it's not a safety event, right? Whereas an OT thing can actually be a safety event if you don't report correctly. So it's better to start with demand forecasting.
So I guess that it's like showing business value first also.
Yeah. It's if you're going to show value, then you can go after more difficult things afterwards, right? But it's an easy way to show value for your initiatives, for sure.
And also, I guess that it requires less deep organizational change.
Quite a little bit less departmental change. you have quite a little bit different. Many less departments are involved. There's only 2 departments basically that are involved in forecasting changes, whereas predictive is many more departments are involved in change for that.
So, and if a company is still early in its AI journey, for example, like oil and gas company or energy company, where would you usually advise it to begin? I mean, we don't need to be restricted with 2 cases, what we discussed now. You had like much more, so like it's a broader question.
Where if a company was starting with its AI journey, every AI journey starts with data consistency. So you have to make sure that your data sets are correct. And then you also have to understand that it's an organizational change, right? So it doesn't matter what you implement, you have to have that buy-in. The other thing is your most valuable resource in your company, no matter what you're producing or doing, is always your people, right? So you have to have a very concise plan on reskilling them, retooling them for AI, and then retraining them for other challenges, right? Or else you're going to lose your most valuable asset, which is always your people. After that, everything's easy.
Okay, and maybe a last question. I just need
So,
to like kind of maybe more concrete about this, like organizational changes. You were talking about that a lot. And what kind of like transformation, I mean, in the organization from this perspective should be done, except this like education of AI. It's understandable, but it's not just education.
so I think so. Like I said before, you're looking at data governance and quality first and sovereignty. Data, data, data. Understand that it's a critical asset for your company.
Great.
If you're in the energy field, you're looking at OT and IT integration. It has to happen. And those walls have to come down to get real value from SCADA and production in the long run. You need to have clarity on the business problems that you're solving, right? Fundamentally. And you have to make sure that you stay disciplined in always connecting those initiatives back to real operational and commercial outcomes. And I think you also have to remember that safety, environmental performance, profitability, none of that's ever changed. And these are simply tools. The job's as complex as it's ever been, really. It's always going to be, well, a little bit more complex. But I mean, like, the drivers for why we're doing things really haven't changed at all.
I think that I was not too maybe clear in my question also. I also like interested about culture. You were talking about culture, like in the organization. What
Yes,
kind of changes should like culture went through?
it's change culture, right? It's you need to get rid of silos. Right now, what happens? Well, I'll put this one first. I'll give an example: silos. So right now, when any process functions, it's divided up into silos. It goes to one silo, they approve it. It goes to another silo, they approve it. It goes to the next silo, they approve it. Every one of those transition points is a place where the process breaks down quite a lot, and will just slow down the processes. You have to work very hard on eliminating those silos and making teams work together. Whereas AI will be less efficient and have less value to the company than it really should. The other piece is you have to get people involved in the processes and why you're making these changes so that they can buy in and trust the process for the pilot and the delivery. Because otherwise, if you have absolutely no buy-in to use the tool and no trust is built, then the implementation it's not going to be effective. You also have to be willing to understand that not everyone can change, and that the mandate of any company is profitability and to grow and to become better. So it's a lot of hard decisions for a lot of people.
Okay, so James, thank you very much. I think it was valuable conversation. We learn how to like energy and oil sector, like look at the AI adoption and what kind of data it's needed and what kind of challenges it faces. I think it's like very valuable to look how to look at the energy industry for our students. And thank you very much for your time. It was very valuable discussion and. I hope to maybe like to see you maybe like later if it will be time. Thank you very much.
You have a lovely day. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
So everybody, and see you on the next session. I will stop.